What's up guys, my name is Timo Parker, I'm a vocal coach and I'm here to help you to improve your singing voice. In today's video I want to talk about a trick, something you should be aware of to save years of training. And I literally mean years of training by just being aware of it and trying to avoid the following thing. So let's dive right into it. So if you've seen previous videos on this channel, you know that I'm always talking about strengthening your yawning muscle. In case you have missed these videos, make sure to check out the playlist in the description box below. I will also link it here. But basically we want to strengthen the yawning muscle to put our thyroid cartilage, aka larynx, in a position that is preferable for singing. That helps us to create higher notes over time. But there are some things that can go terribly wrong and that can cost you years of training, because it's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect, if that makes sense, right? So we have to make sure, and that might sound a little funny, that we are yawning the right way. So when we are yawning, we know already that the thyroid cartilage, aka larynx, lowers, so it goes down in the position. And we can simulate this movement with another muscle that we don't want to use when we are singing. So there is a muscle that attaches to the hyoid bone, so to the very top of the thyroid cartilage. So there is the thyroid cartilage, a membrane, and then the hyoid bone on top. And the hyoid bone is also connected to the tongue, or better the other way around, the tongue is connected to the hyoid bone. And this long muscle attaches to the hyoid bone up here and goes all the way down here to the sternum. That's why it's also called sternohyoid muscle. So it's connecting here and it goes all the way up. And you can try this out yourself. If you're tensing up your tongue and you try to push down your thyroid cartilage, you can actually do that without yawning. So I can feel that this part is tensing up and the thyroid cartilage comes down. So what you are doing here is using the sternohyoid muscle. There's a problem with that because of two reasons. First of all, we are not training efficiently the yawning muscle. The yawning muscle can only be trained if we are relaxed and if we use this muscle in an isolated way. If we are in a very tense situation, if we can't really relax, it's pretty likely that when you try to simulate a yawn that you're going to use this long sternohyoid muscle, which we don't want to use. So over time this will not lead to voice growth, and that's why you should avoid training this long muscle instead of the yawning muscle. The second reason why you should avoid using this muscle is that it's not healthy for your voice and it can deform your thyroid cartilage. So we have the hyoid bone, we have the hyoid bone, we have the membrane, and then under that we have the thyroid cartilage. And when this long muscle, the sternohyoid muscle, contracts, it pulls down the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone compresses the membrane between thyroid cartilage and hyoid bone, and then you're literally compressing your instrument. And because the hyoid bone squeezes the membrane down, it literally pushes down the thyroid cartilage, which is not optimal because we want to have an open instrument when we are singing. And that's why I would highly encourage you to try to avoid using this muscle when you try to yawn. So what are signs that you're using this muscle? First of all, you will feel a great deal of tension in this area here where the hyoid bone is, where the base of the tongue is. So this muscle can be engaged because of tongue tension, and that's why we should always try to keep the tongue relatively relaxed when we are singing. In the beginning it can be a bit challenging because the muscles are not working in symmetry yet, they are not balanced yet. So it's sometimes a bit hard to really stay loose when you are singing. So if you tense up here, that's a sign that you're using this muscle. So now we know that engaging this muscle is not helping us to grow our voice. So what can we do? We can do a simple trick that is called stick out your tongue. Because the hyoid bone is connected to the sternohyoid muscle, but the hyoid bone is also connected to the tongue. And that means if you are sticking out your tongue all the way out, so not like this, but like that, so really all the way out, that you can't stick your tongue out any millimeter, any inch further out. This is a good point because the tongue, which is also attached to the hyoid bone, will keep the hyoid bone in a higher position. So having your tongue out of your mouth is an extra insurance that you're not engaging this super long muscle and you're not compressing your thyroid cartilage. But there's a disadvantage to this one. That's why I would not advise that for a beginner unless you have a special condition. There are exceptions, but in general it's a good idea to avoid this kind of singing in the very beginning, because if you stick your tongue all the way out, there is a muscle that gets also a slight stretch, which is good, but makes it a bit harder to yawn again. So you know, in the first video on this channel I talk about swallowing muscle and yawning muscle, and that we need these two muscles in balance again, because the swallowing muscle is overpowered due to constant use, and the yawning muscle is slightly overstretched because we don't use it as often, so it's not contracted as often. That's why it's a longer muscle. So the thing is that when the tongue is out of your mouth, your swallowing muscle is also connected to the hyoid bone, and the swallowing muscle is also connected to the thyroid cartilage. That means that if the tongue is all the way out your mouth, it is pretty likely that your swallowing muscle is gonna get already a slight stretch by this action, which makes it even harder to bring your thyroid cartilage down with a yawn, because this muscle, which is super tight and doesn't want to get stretched, swallowing muscle, is already in a position where it's slightly stretched, and if you would yawn on top of that, you would stretch it even further, which is at some point a good idea to do if you're training to get the symmetry back, but it makes it really hard to train the yawning muscle because your swallowing muscle is constantly up there, in a slightly stretched position, which again is not bad, but in the beginning you should rather focus on strengthening the yawning muscle, and once there's a certain level of strength established, you can start to level up and stick out your tongue when you're yawning. But this is the trick that can save you years of training just by being aware of it and making sure that you're not using this long sternohyoid muscle. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was helpful to you. If this is the case, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And also, if you're interested in working with me, make sure to click on the link below, which takes you to my website where you can book one-on-one classes with me. In these classes we can focus on your individual goals and make sure that you are using the right muscles for optimal voice growth. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye.